It's Backstage Pass with Steve Ryan. And here's your host, Steve Ryan.
Hey, hey,
Ron,
how's it going?
good. How are you, my friend?
Good. Thank you.
Hey, I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, this is a bucket list conversation for me, so
Oh,
I'm really happy to see you. I'm such a big fan.
thank you.
Hey, tell me about this quartet show that you have coming up here in April.
So typically, in the spring and the fall, we do string quartet shows.
Mhm.
So we do a string quartet tour, very intimate, incredible musicians, all Broadway players, and we've been doing that for years. And then in the summer, we put out the rock band.
Yeah.
So we go back and forth, back and forth. So this fall, we'll be doing a month-long string quartet tour, mostly in the Northeast.
And I read in June you and Edwin McCain are going out together.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
I just saw him last summer here in he was with Train.
Oh, good.
And he
Yeah,
did a great show, but it got rained out, and he cut his set short because there was a lightning worry, and so they it was outside on the grass,
yeah.
and they pulled everybody inside. But he got through his mini set and just said he said, "Listen, I'm going to play the songs that I know you want to hear, and then we
Yeah.
got to get inside."
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, so we look forward to that.
Yeah, is that just? I was looking before we got together. Are you guys just doing just June shows? Or are you?
Yep.
What's the tour look for this year? Just June with Edwin.
Yep, we'll just be doing June. Typically I do a month or so during the summers, so this that's it's a grind out there. So it should be a lot of fun, and he's got great songs, and I think our kind of our worldview matches up, so should be good.
Yeah. You know, when America Town came out in 2000, I just couldn't get enough of that album. And um, I thought, and tell me about, I read a little bit about it, but I wanted to kind of hear it from you is, you know, Five for Fighting isn't really a band, it's you.
Right.
And I had read that the record company or you were worried that, singer-songwriter, it wasn't what was happening at that time. And so that's why you came up with the name of the band. Is that accurate?
Well, it wasn't my idea, it was theirs, and you're right. It was the late 90s, and certainly it wasn't, the 70s with Billy and Elton dominating radio, and Lilith Fair, boy bands, grunge music was kind of the thing, right? And there was really not many singer-songwriters, particularly piano,
Yeah.
on the radio at the time. So they did. They came and said, we need a band name. And to be honest with you, I was a little miffed by that. And I'd just gone to a hockey game, and hockey fans will remember a guy named Marty McSorley. He was Wayne Gretzky's bodyguard, and he got in a couple fights. And so when they asked me that, I kind of, as a joke, I kind of said, "Well, how about Five for Fighting?" Expecting them to hate it, and they're like, "That's amazing. We love it." And I'm like, "You guys are psycho," because it sounded like we were a heavy metal band, right? Five for
Yeah.
Fighting, and back, it's so funny because early in my career, you take any gig anywhere, anytime, right? And you know, club owners would see that and they'd book me in these like heavy metal shows, and I'd bring my little keyboard and I'd play Superman, and everybody'd
Yeah.
be like, "What the hell's going on?" But you know what? It's interesting because I think from a marketing standpoint, it's probably cost the record companies like probably a million records, because the disconnect between here's these songs, here's this band Five for Fighting, no, it's this guy. But
Yeah.
for me, it's been really a blessing because it's really kind of made it about the songs. Um, and also, as a huge sports fan, I've been able to play some of the most iconic sporting events in the world that probably John Ondrasik wouldn't play, but Five for Fighting, let's have him at the All-Star game. Let's have him at Monday Night Football. Let's have
Yeah.
him at Daytona 500. So yeah, and so at the end of the day, I find a lot of silver linings in it, and here we, 30 years later, still chugging along.
Yeah. And speaking of hockey, how about the American men's and women's hockey teams?
I couldn't even watch the overtimes. I was so nervous. It was, it was just amazing. Obviously, particularly it's interesting because typically the women, it's Canada and America and USA, And usually Canada's a little bit better, but the USA is right there, and they've got to the point where the USA is really a dominating team. The women, they beat Canada 10 times in a row. They beat them 5-0 in the early round. But here we go, in the gold medal game, and it's like a nail biter. And so that one I was really glad that our women won because they deserved it. They were the best team. But of course, on the men, you're playing literally, a historic all-star team for Canada, and to survive that game, getting goalied by Hellebuck and Jack Hughes' picture with the broken teeth. I mean, you really could
Yeah.
have done better. It's been unfortunate that there's been this kind of political taint to it.
Yeah.
I actually wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal today about what a disgrace that is from journalists trying to ruin these boys' moment. But I think that'll all go away, and all we'll remember are these boys celebrating America. Kind of, it wasn't a miracle because they're NHL players, but it was certainly something I think that thrilled America.
Yeah. Well, and in a gold medal round, anything can happen.
One game,
Yeah.
it's one game, and we see it in the NHL. A goalie gets hot and steals a game, and he had the game of his life. Now he's going to get what, a presidential medal for it? So, the Ministry
Yeah.
of Defense or whatever he is. But no, it's just great to see, and it's wonderful to see in the last few days, the guys show up at the venues and at the rinks and just getting, you know, just huge ovations, and whether they're in their own town or not. So I think it's one of those things where, these guys will have this moment the rest of their life. It's kind of like winning the Stanley Cup. It bonds you together for the rest of your life, and we'll always kind of remember that moment. And that's the great thing about sports, right? So, and to have both the women and the men win it, again, I think in 100 years people will be talking about it.
Yeah. You mentioned the song Superman. Um, one of my it's in my top 10 favorite all-time songs. And I know that it became kind of an anthem at September 11th, and I thought that was so perfect. How did you feel about that?
Still, geez, 25 years later, it's hard to put your head around it. I mean, at the time, I was this young songwriter, who just got used to hearing his song on the radio, which was like a dream come true. And then I was actually in London on 9/11 promoting Superman because it had started to be kind of a worldwide hit song. And of course, like everybody, I watched The Towers and was horrified and called everybody I knew in New York, couldn't get an answer, and was stuck for 10 days because, of course, they shut down all the airspace. And I didn't realize that Superman was becoming like the song for 9/11 because I was over there. And when I got back, watching CNN and all the cable news channels and seeing that Superman became the song for the heroes of 9/11, it was very moving, very overwhelming, very kind of scary. And performing at the concert for New York, here I am, this guy who just had his little song, start to go, and now I'm sitting with all my icons at Madison Square Garden, and it was overwhelming. But I was also, I think it kind of gave me early a new perspective on music. A lot of folks, you think about fame, fortune, hit songs, celebrity, but watching, kind of that night, and not necessarily my performance, but watching like The Who and people, blow the roof off Madison Square Garden, and those people in that audience who had been down at ground zero, sifting through rubble, watching them cry and laugh and scream and sing. I'm like, okay, music can transcend. It's really about, this is what it's all about, right? So I think that was a good lesson for me early in my career, and maybe I've kind of employed that in some of my works and my thoughts. But yeah, it was very humbling. It's still very humbling, but it reminds you the power of music that can provide solace in ways nothing else can.
Yeah. There's a line in there that you sing. It's um, talking about looking for special things inside of me.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I heard the record, and it just, that line just kind of hit me like a brick. And it's very emotional because, um, and that's the thing about songwriters is and even poets, because they're kind of similar in the same, you're able to say things that people feel in themselves, but can't come up with the words themselves. But that's kind of a universal line, isn't it? That's what we're all trying to do, right?
Well, you're right. I mean, a lot of these sentiments that sing about in my songs, you've heard them a million times. Superman is about basically our innate humanity, right? That we're not perfect, we're not Superman, and we're human, and we make mistakes, and we fail, and we suffer, and we celebrate, and but how do you put that in a way that's never maybe been said before?
Man, we're meant to ride where clouds could swim beneath us. Only a man in a funny red sheet, taken from kryptonite on this one-way street. Only a funny red sheet, looking for special things inside of me, inside of me, inside of me. Inside of me, inside of me. I'm only a man.
Or that can really kind of cut to the heart of the matter. Similar with 100 Years. Live in the moment, appreciate the moment. We've heard it a million times, but how do you write a song that maybe kind of, again, kind of cuts through kind of the cliche and kind of hits you in the heart? And most of my songs, I think, are very simple in that way, in the sentiment. And sometimes, they come as a gift. Superman, I wrote in an hour. I didn't know at the time I was writing it. I mean, I thought it was, here's a nice little song I'll pitch to someone. It was really a gift. I wrote it, when I was struggling in the music business. So you understand it's not easy to be me. But 100 Years, it took 3 months. The Riddle took a year. So you never know with songs. Sometimes they come easy, sometimes you struggle. But yeah, no, that song, again, to this day, it's been fascinating to see how many lives it's had. Just recently, it became, a song for the hostages in Gaza, and I just performed with this young boy who was a hostage for 2 years, and so it's still finding a global impact in ways I never could imagine. But again, your show's about songs, and that's the thing about songs. You put them out in the world, and you never know where they're going to go.
Yeah.
They find their way like kids. Like they surprise you, they disappoint you, they exhilarate you, and certainly without Superman, we would not be talking right now.
Yeah. Well, Easy Tonight was on America Town too. And
Yeah.
man, I love that song. And it just, the buildup in that song, it kind of, it kind of starts out like you always do. But then, boy, by the end of that song, there's this crescendo that is just so powerful, man. I just love that song.
Well, thank you. We talk about Superman, but there would be no Superman without Easy Tonight.
That's right.
Because Easy Tonight did just well enough. It was a number one song at kind of songwriter radio, not pop radio. But the label, Columbia Records, like, who's that guy with that song? Does he have another song?
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's the only song that's been a hit of mine that I wrote on guitar. And most people think of me as like a soft rock balladeer, which I certainly am. I'm proud of that. But Five for Fighting's always been a rock band, and if you listen to the record, they're rock records, and the songs that's been hits have been the ballads. So yeah, I really, Easy Tonight again for me is very special because it is the reason it kicked everything off, and I still love playing that song. And as I said, it's if you come to a show, it's a rock show. It's not a guy sitting at a piano.
I sure am getting there. Shotgun burning, buddy, home. I got 2 times in the telephone, alright. No, it's not easy tonight. Shotgun burning, buddy, home. I got 2 times in the telephone, alright. No, it's not easy tonight. You were bound, you were afraid.
Well, and that was something I was gonna ask you because I mean you've been doing this a minute now,
Yeah.
and I mean you've written, I'm sure, hundreds and hundreds of songs, and
Yeah.
you still got to put your set list together. There's a limited amount of time, and how you choose, especially if you have a new album out, you want to do some of the new songs, but there's songs that you have to do. Is you still like that? Because I talked to some people like, man, there's just I just had to cut that out of the show because I just couldn't do it anymore.
Well, I'm thankful that the two songs I have to play, I still love playing. I love playing Superman. I love playing 100 Years. You know, I'm always somewhere in 100 Years. You know, when I wrote it, I was in the second verse. Now I'm in the bridge.
Yeah.
So it's always kind of fresh to me. You know, there are a few songs, if I never played them again, I probably wouldn't lose any sleep. But one nice thing about doing the quartet tours and the rock band is the sets are different.
Mm.
You know, for the quartet tour, I can pull out, you know, some songs like "Devil in the Wishing Well" and "Nobody" and "Two Lights" that have these incredible string arrangements and talk about the stories. And then for the rock band, I can pull out "65 Mustang." You know, I can pull out some of the, you know, "America Town," songs that we don't do in the quartet show. So I kind of have these bouncing back and forth between these kind of two worlds that allow me to pull different songs from my catalog. And every year we add a song I've never played before from my catalog. And every year we add a new cover. And as you said, there's always new songs. You know, "Can One Man Save the World?" The song I wrote about Ukraine. That's become a staple in our set.
Can one man save the world in 1,000 years? Will they say your name, or is this all in vain? Can one man save the world? Will you take my hand? Will you help me stand still in the end? Can one man save the world?
That people want to hear and is very relevant to this day. So there are songs, and sometimes, you know, people will just say, you know, send me an email, "Will you please play this song at the show?" And I'm
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, if the band knows it, I'll play it," and we pull it out. So the set's always changing. We never play the same thing, and I also want, you know, for me as a performer, you know, people that maybe have come a few times to the shows, I want them to see something different. You
Yeah.
know, we add a video component. You know, so it's always growing, and also it keeps it more fun for me and the players. Right? It's just we're not just going through the motions every night.
Yeah. You know, you talked about the song "The Riddle" earlier from the Two Lights LP, but
Yeah.
there's my go-to track on that is "World."
Yeah.
Man, I love that song, and it had some the NASA space station, you know, was their theme song for a while or something. Brother, that's incredible.
You know, it's really special, and interestingly, "World" may be more relevant now than it was when I wrote it. It gets used in so many different places. Often we open the show with it, and for me, you mentioned NASA using it. That came about because one of the astronauts in the space station used to go into the kind of top of the space station where it was very kind of secluded and float around, and he would put on that song and listen to "What Kind of World Do You Want?" orbiting our planet, looking down on Earth. And when he came to me and he told me that, got chills,
Yeah.
and, you know, and they started using it to kind of for the space station. I was able to play at the closing ceremonies of the space shuttle, and this was always great for me because my dad is an astrophysicist. He grew up working for NASA and JPL, so I grew
Wow.
up kind of in this golden age of the solar system space flight. My dad would bring home, like, you know, pictures of Titan before the media got them, and so I've always been a kind of a space freak. So, you know, and you know, and I got to go. You know, me and my family got to go to kind of Houston and talk to them, and you know, we had all these great little things. But so for me, it was truly an honor, and yeah, I play that video sometimes. It's interesting. It's with Russian and cosmonauts and, you know, U.S. astronauts, and obviously this is a rough time with Russia. But,
Right.
you know, I do think it kind of is always kind of poignant in that, you know, we are on this big planet together, right? And
Yeah.
we figure it out. So, and I love playing that song. I love playing that song.
What kind of world do you want? Let's start at the start. Build a masterpiece. Careful what you wish for. History starts now. Sunlight's on the bridge. Sunlight's on the way.
You know, I sit here and it's kind of amazing. I don't know how as a person you wrap your head around how significant a song that you sing and wrote is. Speaking of that song and speaking of Superman and the 9/11 theme. I mean, brother, how do you wrap your head around that? And as a person, I mean, that's just I can't even imagine the feeling inside.
Yeah, I think, certainly, again, it's very humbling. I think I've been blessed that, I have a lot of other things out of music that take a lot of my life. We have a family business, we have a wire business, we make shopping carts, I've been working at the family business since I was 15 years old, and it's a million miles away from the music business. You see the American dream every day. You see people sweating, you see people starting at minimum wage and then, putting their kids through college. And so I have this other world that I think is the real world.
I
And so
get you.
it gets me in, and I'm also very blessed that my wife, Carla, was in the music business. She was a music publisher. She discovered me. We got married, had a kid before I had any success. So I think, kind of her understanding my obligations and sharing this with me. And also I think part of the fact too is, I had success very late. I was in my early, late 20s, early 30s when Superman came out. So I wasn't 19,
Yeah.
and so I really was grateful for this. It was a miracle almost at this. So I think it's a lot of gratitude. Um, but also I think, for me, seeing the songs still resonate, that gives me the most joy that, here we are 20, 25 years later, but 100 years is still graduations, weddings, funerals, and Superman has just become this kind of song for Israel, and the Jewish folks around the world. So I think that actually gives me a lot of satisfaction that it's not just these kind of, oh yeah, I remember that, but they're still making their own way and having impact.
Yeah. Speaking of impact, there's a song that was used in the blind side of yours called Chances.
Yeah.
Man, I love that song so much. It was from your Slice album, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that movie was so impactful to so many people. And I know you're a sports fan, so you must have just loved that it was used.
If I could tell you a funny story about that, I think you'll like it. So, of course, as musicians, we're always, trying to get our songs in movies and television shows so people hear them. And when I wrote Chances, we sent it out, the record company to different films, and it was tempting a big blockbuster, big summer blockbuster, and everyone was very excited because, half a billion people are going to hear your song. And I was sent the script to the blind side, and I read it, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And they're like, yeah, we'd like to use Chances as our end title for The Blind Side. And I was excited because I'm like, wow, this seems really great for this movie. As you said, it's like sports, family, just life lessons. And so I had this dilemma of what do I do, And long story short, I ended up pulling it, from this big blockbuster and put it in The Blind Side, which nobody thought anybody was going to see. It was a very small budget movie. The production company said they didn't have much expectation, and a lot of people were very mad at me, including my wife, and the record company and my manager, but of course, The Blind Side became the biggest sports movie in history, and people correlate that song with that movie. And again, Chances also has found its way into a lot of sports, kind of media or ads or videos. And so, yeah, that's pretty awesome too. And I still, that's another song that we play every night because, the whole idea of, that's really my career, actually. Chances probably fits my experience more than any song. Superman does not. It's pretty easy to be me.
Chances are when said and done, who'll be the lucky ones that make it all the way? Though you say I could be your answer, nothing lasts forever, no matter how it feels today. Chances are we'll find a new equation. Chances roll away from me. Chances are all they hope to be.
Chances, the whole thing of getting knocked down and getting up, for 15 years I was told, you're you're a good songwriter, but you're not a great singer. You're a good singer, but you're not a great songwriter.
Right.
But so it really about that idea of just getting up and keeping on swinging, and whatever happens happens. But there's satisfaction in failing if you truly know you gave it your all.
Yeah. Hey, just a couple more things because I know we're up against the clock.
Okay.
There is a song that you put out a couple of years ago called "Okay,"
Yeah.
and I know that was really special and significant to you. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, in the last few years, I've put out a few songs. One called "Blood on My Hands" that was about the withdrawal from Afghanistan that became significant for our troops who felt gutted by the fact that we abandoned their allies, and that was a voice for them. We mentioned "Can One Man Save the World" for Ukraine, where I kind of went over there and saw that and did a song with the orchestra, and I was like, I don't want to write any more of these songs, and but then of course after October 7th, we saw the collapse of so many moral institutions, the media, our college campuses run amok with anti-Semitism. And I'm not Jewish, it's just we saw this in Congress, and so I wrote this song, "We're Not Okay." Something's broken. Something's very broken when you see these atrocities October 7th, and then all of a sudden, within a few hours, everybody's blaming Israel and the Jewish people. And so the song, again, I had not much expectation, but when Israel shared it on their social media, it became like Superman did, kind of a song for our Jewish friends who felt abandoned by society and the arts and sanity, which they had been and they continue to be. And so, again, it was a song that became very significant and has kind of led me to do a lot of work in the last couple of years since October 7th, particularly for the hostages and their families. So it's kind of wonderful that I kind of had this closing moment last week, performing Superman with hostage Alon Oel, who's a great piano player, and that all started with "Okay," right? That song. So songs take you places you could never imagine. And again, I hope I don't have to write any more of these, but we'll see where the world goes.
Do you worry about putting yourself out there politically like that with your art? Is it?
I don't. I don't so much worry about the sniping online and what people think of me and the music press, and but the reality is, particularly with OK and supporting Israel, you do get threats, and you have to hire extra security for your shows, and particularly because my daughter tours with me, so you just have to do things that are unfortunate, but pragmatic. But again, it's like, whatever heat I get, whatever opportunities I lose in the music business, or people don't buy a ticket or scream at me. It's like when you sit with hostage families, right? When you sit with our wounded warriors, when you work with, ALS patients, like all these things, right? My problems are very small, in retrospect. So again, yeah, it is what it is, but it's not going to stop me from doing it, because these things need to be said. Nobody else is saying them, and I guess again, you do shows on songs. We've seen throughout history, music has a place in the culture, and songs have a way of permeating, and nothing else does. So, I'll continue to do it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Going full circle, and I put this last on my list because I wanted to kind of make a full circle about your catalog and what you do. I've spent some time with "Message for Albert,"
Oh my goodness.
your first album, and I hadn't really spent much time with it. But "Bella's Birthday Cake," man, I love that song. I've looped it and listened to it like 5 times. It's this little rocker.
Oh yeah. Again, it's unfortunate that the EMI Records closed right when that record came out, because Bella Birthday Cake was our first single. And as you said, it's a piano rock song just out of, the Beatles and the Who and Elton and Billy, and it's really kind of where I started, the rock piano guy. And we do still play Bella. We will play, we'll pull Bella out, with the rock band.
Mhm.
And because it really is kind of where I started this thing. keep saying you should re-record it and release it, but I have other things on my bucket list to do. But yeah, it makes me very happy that you mentioned that because very few people do.
Wow. Oh man, I love that song so much.
Thank you.
Hey, John, I know I'm a little past what I promised you, but man, thank you so much for giving me some time. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your music. And I'm just such a huge fan, and giving me some time today has just been really great.
Thank you, Steve. It's been my pleasure. And thank you for talking about songs every day. What a wonderful thing to talk about. And I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, and when you have new projects out, I'd love to have you back on because I only got about through half of your catalog that I wanted to talk to you about. So we got plenty more to talk about when you've got the new stuff coming out.
Yeah, we'll come on before the string quartet tour. We can talk more about that.
I'll do it.
All right, buddy.
Thank you so much, John. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay.
No better than me. When you only got 100 years to live.
For questions or comments, email Steve at steveryan.songoftheday@gmail.com.